welcome to the 15th episode of the Raceday Review. As always, my name is Joe Jets19. I am the lead NASCAR writer for LineStar, a DFS analytics company. Before we get started on this Memorial Day, I just want to take a moment to recognize that we are all here bitching about Chase Elliott's decision or William Byron's blown tire or whatever else we want to do because of the sacrifice all of our veterans have made. Memorial Day, or specifically the sacrifice for the fallen veterans. They gave their life for all the freedoms that we have, and we are in a great place. COVID and all, we're very lucky to be able to watch NASCAR last night, watch NASCAR right now if you're watching the Xfinity, and we shouldn't take that for granted. So that's the meaning of the holiday. Let's get that out of the way because it is very important to keep everything in perspective. Um, but yeah, that's what we're gonna start off with. But we are going to go over the Coca-Cola 600, which was run last night at Charlotte Motor Speedway. It was entertaining, depending on who you had. It was long, 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 very long. You hear it a million times. It is a 600-mile race, which is 400 laps because it's a mile and a half course, a mile and a half track. It's always every year I forget just about how long it is, and then we add a 1 hour rain delay, which actually worked out to my favor a little bit. I was able to watch more of the race because of it, and it just the time just adds up. It's a full night adventure of NASCAR, which isn't a bad thing, isn't a good thing. It's a lot better to deal with when you're having winning lineups. If you don't have any winning lineups, then it's just excruciating to watch the money slip away. But we'll start off as always with the perfect lineup. This is the perfect lineup right here. I say we start off with that, but I actually like to start off with the targets. How did I think things were going to shake out going into the race? I put the targets right down there just because it fits nice, but really I should probably put that on top of the perfect lineup, but who really cares? So I was thinking a lot of the races going in, you actually had to have three high price drivers. I usually count a high price driver as over not $10,000. It's only been recently that DraftKings has pushed the top salary up to the $12,000 range, like we'll see on Wednesday. Um, so it's kind of hard to look back 2017 and 2016. They had a different pricing algorithm, but even then they had three $9,000 drivers. It was a little more compressed. The top guy would only be about 10,000, 10,500, but the bottom guy will only be about 5,500. So they shortened the range a little bit, or they had a shorter range. They widened it as the years have gone on. But what we're usually going into the race, they would have at least one driver lead 100 laps, and then a second driver lead any more than like 75 to 80 laps, and both of those drivers would be in the perfect lineup. There have been a couple of races this year, not this year, but a couple of races at Charlotte where one driver just ran away with it with 200, maybe sometimes 300 laps led. But even in that case, the second driver who only led like 50 laps would end up being in the perfect lineup also, and they always had at least two drivers, sometimes three, that were very expensive in the in the 10 to 12,000 range. So that's what I thought we were going into, and then qualifying happened. There was some obvious chalk. Almirola having issues with qualifying, as well as Di Benedetto crashing his car and going to the backup car. Had to move to the rear, but because of the crash, he only qualified 33rd. Custer qualified pretty poorly, and he was at a very good price range for what we wanted to do. So I had to make a game day adjustment. I wrote up the article on Saturday that I write, but I mentioned in there, things can change, and we had to be active on Twitter and active in chat to figure out what was going on. And I really wanted to stress that I wasn't looking for a two dominator lineup three dominator lineup as much any longer because the pricing the way it was just going to be impossible to get the place differential drivers that we wanted because the original way I was going to structure a lineup is three guys in 10,000 above, three guys in like the 6,000 and below range, normally one $5,000 guy, two $6,000 guys, roughly around there, and that's how we would make up the salary. Unfortunately, the guys who did not qualify well were in the $7,000 range. Blaney was an $8,000 driver, so that really forced my hand to try to only pick one driver that I thought would be able to lead the laps, the second driver that I thought would catch up and lead the rest of the race, and really need to go at a two dominator idea. The top three, I thought there would be at least someone up there that would lead a good chunk of laps. You had Kurt Busch, you had Jimmy Johnson on the front row, and Chase Elliott on the starting third. I thought Elliott was our biggest shot of being a lap leader of the three. Kurt Busch actually put up a solid fight for the time that he was up there. So that surprised me a little bit. I thought Chase Elliott would be able to get around him a little quicker than he did. But well, that's going more a little bit later on. But because of the way that everything ended up shaking out, we had to shift the way that we wanted to. We were going into it, but you have to make a you have to make adjustments on the fly. It's pretty standard, especially with the short amount of time in between qualifying and the race time, that I tried to get that information out as humanly possible, as quickly as humanly possible. And that really opened up the mid-range for us, the $7,000, $8,000 drivers who I had originally written off entirely because I didn't think they could lead laps and I didn't think they would have enough place differential. You ended up having to play a couple of them. But we'll go there. So, who I wanted the cheap drivers, anyone in the $6,000 range, I needed it to be a driver that could get to the top 15, and anyone in like the 5,500 and lower, I needed to get to the top 30. Those were really the marks that I was going to need. Of course, you got the guys that are starting 39th, so it would be great if they finish 29th, you pick up the 10 spots and finish 29th, but they had to be able to get there. And with a lot of these drivers finishing back there, starting back there also, it really, you had to pick and choose. There were only so many drivers that can do that. And even the way it worked over 400 laps, these drivers in terrible cars have to be able to drive the terrible cars for 400 laps, not 267 laps, not the 300 laps. It's a lot of wear and tear on the driver. It's a lot of wear and tear on the car. And I mean, Hamlin's car didn't even make it one fucking lap. Um, and he's on a good team. So any of these drivers that are on poor teams, you always have to worry about their car just imploding on them. That's why it makes it a little more difficult, and you have to be selective back there. So starting with the perfect lineup, Truex I thought was the stud of the day. He just loves races where he can um, start the car in one setup and it doesn't work that well, but once the daytime turns to the nighttime, he just runs away from the field. So he doesn't excel at night races. He excels at day to night races, where drivers only focus on one setup. He can get the two setups that work to his advantage later on. From my model, Martin Truex, I had him in 60% of my lineups. The field was right around 40%, so 41% the $4, 39.9% the $12. He ended up being in the perfect lineup, so that was who you would want to uh, build your lineups against. His average finish at the last 5 races of Charlotte was 1.75. That is absolutely ridiculous. And then add the fact that his average placement differential in that time is plus 11.75. I would really hoped that he had qualified around 15th because I knew he was going to get up there no matter what, and that would have meant that this 40% would have been down to 30%, and I would have stayed at my 60, but I would have had a chance for them to be even more leveraged. But 1.5 times the field is not a bad way to go. He's good at the similar track. He started 8th. He finished 7th, so that's not where I wanted him to finish. Um, he led almost the entire third stage, and I thought he'd be able to clear out the entire third stage, but there was a late caution. He he went in, Logano stayed out. Logano was my fade, and I really hated him for it. And then he wasn't able to get the lead again. I thought he'd be able to lead pretty much the last 200 laps, and unfortunately, that's not how it played out. Sorry, I'm just making sure my son's not waking up on me. But so I thought that he was going to be the player, without a doubt, hands down, the player I wanted, especially as a dominator, as a high priced player. He was only in the $10,000 range, so he's actually the third highest price driver behind Kyle Busch and Harvick. I liked Harvick more than Busch. He was starting 22nd, so he had place differential points built in. I thought that he didn't have a better run at Charlotte, which I thought would have him have lower ownership, which I'm surprised people didn't care about the Charlotte stats as much as this year stats, which I thought that's what I thought gave Harvick the edge. But Harvick was actually almost twice as owned as Kyle Busch, and he was only a couple $100 less. I had them in the same. I made 150 lineups. I had them at the same ownership percentage for my lineups, which I liked Harvick more. And I had him in more of my cash game bills or my hand big lineups. This is just my ownership in my in like the script I ran for the 150. But I had him a lot more in my hand built lineups. It's just that um, he was the better play, so that worked out well. I like the Kyle Busch has not been able to get his car right at all, and especially without any practice. I didn't think that he was going to be able to just do it in race again. He hasn't led any laps besides a Daytona race, which doesn't really count. No one wants to lead laps at Daytona. So it's just he's not having a Kyle Busch type year, and I wrote in the chat. I think I might have put in the chat that Kyle Busch is the type of driver that you want to be early on because he'll win you a ton of money. He'll win you a ton of money the first time that he goes off, but then he'll get hot and win like 6 races in a row. And by the time that he'll still be the highest priced driver, but he will also be the highest owned driver, and that's just no fun to do. So I tried to be early. Didn't work out well for me. It did not work out well. It's just I ended up being twice the field in Kyle Busch ownership and only a little bit over on Kevin Harvick. But neither one of them were in the perfect lineup because of the place differential drivers, so it is what it is. So we're going to go with. So it ended up being not really a 3 high-priced driver because only one of them were over $10,000. Keselowski ended up winning the race, but he didn't lead enough laps, and he didn't have enough place differential to really get anything going. So Bowman was actually the darling. He led 164 laps, finished 19th. He's been having a good season. I was not on him at all whatsoever. Let's go up to Bowman. I'd have been 20% just because I figured the field would be about 20%, which I was pretty much right. So I was even with the field, but overall I wasn't leveraged in any way. Yeah, I just I he ran away with it, and he's gonna be starting second. So I just want to tell you that there is going to be a discrepancy between the finishing positions and everything, and that is going to be because Jimmy Johnson actually failed post race tech, so his second place finish was voided to a 40th place finish. So, like Bowman says that he's starting 20th, but he will be actually starting. He will get the points for a 19th place finish for playoffs and this. But this is where DK scored him and stuff, because they did not update FanDuel. FanDuel did update and voided uh, Jimmy Johnson's finishing position, and then they prorated all of the contests and stuff like that. DraftKings did not, which is pretty much average to the field, so I don't really think it's going to hurt me or help me anyway. Maybe. I don't really know. I could run the numbers, but I'm not going to. It would be a lot more work than it's needed. The moral of the story is Jimmy Johnson failed tech, going to be starting last, and he is the highest price driver for Wednesday's slate. So that's going to make life a little interesting because I liked him, I liked his car, but it's a lot to pay for a pure place differential play. We'll get there when we get there. So Bowman, he's been having a great year. I wasn't sure. His average finish here was 8th. He started 12th. He usually picks up a lot of laps. Picks up a lot of places. So if he started 20th, I would be okay. I wasn't expecting him to get all the way up there. His average run position was okay. I wasn't expecting him to get out front and lead as many laps as he did. That was impressive. I tweeted out about halfway through the race that I don't know how he passed Tech because apparently he showed up with a rocket ship. What was good about Bowman that is very encouraging about Wednesday's race is that he was able to work through the pack. He started 12th, so he had to make his way up front. He was up front. He ran away once he got the clean air, which it's very hard to catch someone up front, but actually Truex ended up catching him and made a green flag pass, which who would have ever thought that was going to happen? But that was off of a restart, so it just wasn't. He didn't have a great restart. He wasn't able to pull away from the field, so it's not like he got run down or anything. Bowman's cars are usually very good on the short run, but over the long run they don't catch it. They don't time it well. It's not great for them. But he had short run speed and long run speed. It was very impressive to watch him race this weekend, well, last night. So I don't see any problem with him starting on the pole, and he's going to be 80. He's going to be 8,300, I think. So he's gonna he's got to beat William Byron off the block, but I think he's gonna be able to run away with a good chunk of laps, and I'm going to have a lot of Bowman going forward. So Ryan Blaney, one of my least favorite place differential guys. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put this in starting position range. So Eric Almirola, who actually was not in the perfect lineup, surprisingly, was my highest price, one of my highest owned drivers. Hold on 1 second. I don't know why that shows. What the? I don't know why it's not going right. But Almirola was actually. Give me 1 second. 55. He was actually in 80% of my lineups. Um, I believe that's right, but I had him in 80% of my lineups. That is a lot of freaking lineups. He didn't end up making it into. God damn it. Sorry. Hopefully this will sort it out right again. I apologize for the delay. Still nothing. Anyway, I also don't know why Boyer at 9 is up there at the top. But so he was in 80% of my lineups. I knew he was going to be one of the highest owned drivers of the day. He was the highest. He was starting dead last. His average finish at Charlotte was 16th. He normally qualifies well and falls back. His average finish at similar tracks is 15th, again, same around, and he normally runs up front. 53 DK points, not a bad day, especially at his price. It's just he happened to be beat up. Blaney was able to outdo him, which good for him. But the reason I brought this up is because we had Amarola starting here. We had Suarez, who doesn't really matter because he's priced like he has a better car than he does, but he still finished. He hit my top 30 mark, but he was also a $6,000 driver, so I needed him to be in the top 22 because of where he started, and he didn't do that. But he's once he gets priced down to the 5500s, he'll be a playable driver. He's about another $700 drop. Di Benedetto starting 33rd. I really liked him going into the weekend. He wasn't one of my highest played drivers, but he was up there. Let's see, 44. I had him in 44% of my lineups. So right under Kevin Harvick and Kyle Busch, and he was about 10% over the field. 44 points doesn't win you the contest, but sure as hell helps you pay off your entries. Truex is 60%. He was my second highest owned driver. And then I had, let me look up, and the next piece of chalk. This was an interesting range. So Blaney starting 26th, I wasn't really happy with. If you look at Blaney, I had him in 30%. I told everyone that everyone was talking about Blaney. Absolutely everyone was talking about Blaney. I'm not a big believer in Blaney. A 20.25 average finish, -8 average place differential. He did have two top tens, but he had upside and he had relative safety because he hasn't crashed out too much. I worried from Blaney that he was going to start 26th and finish 19th, 18th, 19th, just not get a run, not really do much. And his average run, let me see, his average run for the race was 11th. So he was up there for most of the race. So he vastly outdid what I expected him to do. I was way under him. I was 10%, 7% under him on the $12, which was okay, I'd say, which is nice because I wanted it. I was looking for about the field. Yeah, I want to be a little bit under the field just in case it wasn't the right call, but I didn't have a lot of confidence in him. He was in more of my hand-built lineups than anything, but I was still under. I made 5 or 6 lineups, and he was only in 2 of them, so that was about 33%. All in all, not anything like he had a great race. He hit the upside. He hit his ceiling. You play him for his ceiling. I avoid him for his floor, just like everyone else. Um, he made the perfect lineup. He made me money, so I can't get mad at him. Just I wasn't really keen on him. Custer and McDowell are the drivers I kind of liked in that range. So just since we're getting to the end of the perfect lineup a little bit, didn't really like Gase because could he get to the top 30? Probably, most likely not. No. Top 30, probably, most likely not. The top 30, probably, most likely not. I thought Yelly had a top 30 in him, so I had some Yelly. Timmy Hill, a top 30 is not going to do anything for me. I started 32nd, so Quinn Huff had some of. So now that the really cheap drivers are out of the way, then we have to go with the kind of cheap drivers. Custer, I just found myself in his price range a lot. There weren't a lot of people in the $3,000, $6,000 range. You can go with the safety of Custer, or you can go with the upside of Ryan Newman, or Chris Buescher was my other guy. That was right around that price range. that I liked. Buescher started 19th and finished 11th. Let's see where I was with these guys. Newman I had 15% of, so I was way under the field. I wrote him up. I liked him. I liked where he was. I liked him for starting 25th and finishing around 15th to hit my top 15. He's starting where he did. He had more risk, so I never got to the. I wanted him about 25 to 30% on my lineups. I wasn't able to get there. Chris Buescher I also liked. Um, but again, one of my options were Chris Buescher or Cole Custer. I preferred Custer, even though they scored just about the same. But Custer was a little bit cheaper, scored a little bit better. I thought that there would be more people on Custer. Actually, the reason I liked Custer is he did decent enough here in Xfinity. The 9 and the 7 is he ran well in Phoenix, which is one of the similar tracks that I used, not Vegas. Vegas was not actually as closely related to Charlotte as Phoenix, so I went with Phoenix. So these are those from that. Custer started 28th, finished 13th. I would have been happy with, I think, a top 15, which he got 13th, but I would have 18 or 19 would have been fine. Might not have been in the perfect lineup, but so he exceeded my expectation where Buescher did pretty much exactly what I thought, starting 18th and finishing 11th. He started 19th and finishing 11th. He wasn't he was riskier than I wanted. That's why Newman and Buescher going into the race, I was much higher. Going into qualifying, I was much higher on than what ended up playing out, unfortunately. But so they were the pivots off of Custer, but I still liked Custer. McDowell was a little cheaper, so I liked him. I actually wrote him up as my value play. I had him in 20% on the lineups, which you'd think, what a value play. Why would you say you like him? But I was actually double the field on McDowell. And again, I ended up writing the article going into how I expected, so I was hoping McDowell would end up uh, qualifying in the 30s. He ended up qualifying in the high 20s. His average finish here is 23.5, which is great for a cheap driver. His average was a loss of laps. He actually only had one finish worse than like 22nd or something along those lines this year. I didn't like him as much starting 27th as I would have liked him starting like 33rd. But I took him at 27th. That's why once qualifying happened, I know I've mentioned this a couple times, but once qualifying happened and the chalk ended up being in the $7,000 range, I've had to pivot, and instead of jamming in guys like my original intention would jam in Newman, jam in Laka Newman, Naki, and McDowell, and have them be pretty highly owned, and then flip around with my dominators who I wanted, but everything just kind of got thrown into the air from there. It is what it is. Oh, now I realize why they were in that order. But and then finally Chase Elliott. We talked about him a little bit, but I still want to go in on it. So the top three drivers were Kurt Busch, Jimmy Johnson, and Chase Elliott. I liked Chase Elliott's chance to lead the laps the most, basically because he has had the best season so far. He's also looked great Wednesday night until Kyle Busch spun him, and I thought that he had a possibility of really just taking his revenge out on the field. I thought he'd be able to get past these guys pretty quickly and then run away with the first stage. Didn't happen like that, but he still got his chance. He was driving away for the win when William Byron's tire blew, and then he decided to pit when the rest of the field stayed out, and the rest is history. Another bad beat. It's going to be Chase's day someday. He's going to be starting 16th. No, yeah, he'll be starting. Actually, no. he will be starting 19th now. So I could make him a decent play. I didn't see what his I don't remember what his pricing is for Wednesday. But so he ended up being in the perfect lineup. He ended up being the play. Just didn't get there the way I was expecting it to. I was hoping for a little more out of him, but that's perfectly fine. I thought of the three. Let me see what my ownership was, but um, so we're gonna be looking for my ownership of Chase Elliott at 27%, Kurt Busch at 20%, and Jimmy Johnson at 19%. So I wanted a 1.5 times the other guys, but I wanted a little exposure to most of them because I figured one of them would be in the perfect lineup. I wrote that being starting in the front row does not guarantee you to be in the perfect lineup here. It's not a track where the guy on the pole is going to lead 200 laps and run away with it. Passing's possible, passing's likely, passing is going to happen. Um, so while I didn't think that they were a guarantee, I thought that there was a decent chance there. So I played 40% of them. One of these two drivers turned out to be the guy in third that was in the perfect lineup. Um, but that's why I love playing 150 lineups in NASCAR specifically. There are 40 drivers. You can't get every combination. I know that it's absolutely impossible, but if you leverage your percentages right, you at least have a shot to do some damage eventually. Because you look at it critically. These three drivers definitely gonna have a chance to lead laps, and they all did to a certain extent. Johnson had a couple laps led. Chase Elliott had a couple laps led. Kenseth, not a shot in hell. He's still trying to get his feet under him, still a little bit too expensive. He's going to start 27th, so that makes him interesting, but he's priced up. Tyler Reddick, having a good season for himself, pretty cheap, a lot of downside. He scored pretty well. I didn't have a lot of them, so he's going to be down here. Didn't have any of them. Low owned, 33 points. Respectable race. You see Kenseth, low owned, -5 points. Not that it wasn't respectable, but Austin Dillon, no chance to lead laps. My first challenge for a lap leader was going to be Logano. Logano doesn't run well here. Yes, he won here last time out, but if we look at, I've really got to put it back to A to Z, so it'll be much easier to find people. I had him at 5%, which is a third of the field, just about. His average finish here is 17.75, and that's including a win. Just to remind you. And it's not like it's been car trouble or anything like that. It's just not the best here. His average running position here is 17th. He he did win a stage, but his average running position was 8th. Not what you want from the 7th place driver when he costs more than $10,000. So my idea was that someone in the top 3 was going to hold serve until Truex came along. I figured maybe the first stage, then Truex, once the lights went on and everything, Truex would get the next 200 laps, and then the last stage would be kind of a free-for-all of who was going to win the race. Keselowski, I had some of. He ended up winning the race. He ended up scoring pretty well too, if I remember correctly. 5%, very low owned. 72.75 points is a nice score for him. But again, 19.25 average finish. It just wasn't. His average of run wasn't great. We don't have any speeds to deal with, practice speed, so I didn't know what kind of car he had. Let me see what he actually ran. His average run position was 11th, so he came on strong late, but Byron had a good car for most of the day. He is now going to start on the pole. 13 fastest laps is nowhere near Bowman's 50, 52. So I don't think he's going to be able to handle Bowman going forward. But he's going to be an interesting. He ended up falling back. He's going to be an interesting look because he ran seventh. He ran in the top 10 for most of the race. Sorry, my son's not going to sleep. We're going to have to cut this kind of short soon, but we'll see where we go. So keep going down. Cowbush didn't. I couldn't tell if he didn't like his car much. Finished fifth, so he's going to start 15th. Bowman's was the play. We went over him. Hamlin's car broke right off the bat. On pace laps, pretty sad for a team like his. Um, was able to finish 30th. He kind of wanted to back it up, but they wouldn't let him. It's kind of funny. Eric Jones, kind of a blah race for him. Started 14th, going to the 12th. I didn't really like him. I didn't have a lot of him. Nothing really to say there. Christopher Bell, just thought he kind of started too high. He wasn't interested. He didn't fit. Had absolutely no Ty Dillon. Didn't want him anything to do with him starting 16th. Ricky Stenhouse, you always want some, but I liked what I called the poor man's Ricky Stenhouse of Bubba Wallace, who went full Ricky on me and ended up having his battery die. I believe he's the one who had his battery die. So that's funny. He's like $8,000 for the next race, which is gonna be hard to stomach a little bit coming from Bubba Wallace because his battery just might die a second time. So going through, we could Boyer hurt. Boyer hurt. I actually didn't have a lot of Boyer, but he was just in the right place at the right time when it was coming to crunch time and I was tinkering with my lineups. I only had him at 10%, negative 15 DK points. But I had him as a qualifier play. I had to think about what the word I wanted. But yeah, I had him as like a qualifier play. I had a couple of qualifier lineups I threw out there that were doing good early on in the race until Boyer showed up. I think I had paired Bowman. I had Bowman, Truex, Boyer, and as my staple in my qualifier team. And Boyer was running. Let me see. Okay, well, his average position wasn't 34th, but um, he was running pretty well. He was running in the top like 15 until he decided to just smack the wall very hard, and that hurt me. Again, in my GPP teams, didn't hurt too bad because I was under the field, but on my handpicked teams, not so much. Just trying to see. And Bubba Wallace, I like LaJoy. I would have liked if it didn't start so high. And we pretty much went through the rest of the field here. If I missed anyone, but anyone can ask me questions on Twitter, twitter.com, or just at JoeJets19. The winning lineup was the perfect lineup for both races. If you look up on Line Start, it'll tell you the perfect lineup was a higher score, like 405, and that's because they took their points manually. It looks like they calculated them themselves from the loop data. And if you go through the loop data, it has Jimmy Johnson finishing last. So most of these guys had 2 extra points. Anyone who finished after second has 2 extra points. So that added up to the extra 12 points. So that's how it got there. The min cash was actually almost the same. The risk-free $4 did not go my way. I got all of my $20 back and not a penny more. But that was what makes it risk-free. I was aiming for the top there. I placed like 600th in the carburetor with my single bullet there, so not bad. My lineup for that was Chase Elliott, Chase Elliott, Truex. I had Blaney, didn't have Bowman, but I did have Custer, Almirola, and McDowell. something along those lines, something along there. I had a lot of um, I had a lot of Truex. I had some Truex Harvick lineups. I had a handful of Truex, um, Truex Harvick, Truex, Kyle Busch, some Kyle Busch Harvick in case Truex shit the bed, which he got tapped on the back a couple of times, and that would have changed my night drastically. He tried to get spun a couple of times, and that would have probably reduced me to tears if we're going to be totally honest. Um, but overall, a solid performance from most drivers. Nothing really too terrible about it. So looking into what's going to happen on Wednesday, I'll just do a quick blip. So they invert the top 20, so it's actually going to be the top 21 because Jimmy Johnson's going to be going to last. And so our starting is going to be Byron and Bowman on the front row. Di Benedetto, McDowell, Nemechek, Almirola, Dawson, Dillon are all going to be 0% owned, for me at least. Logano, again, is in like a weird position that I don't really like him for, and there aren't nearly as many laps. It's only going to be 500 kilometers, which is 205 laps. Buscher's going to end up ninth, so he qualified too high. Bell's going to be too high. Reddick's going to be a little interesting. I didn't see what his price was. Truex is right where I wanted him on Wednesday, on Sunday. And this is going to be a murderer's row. Yeah, Truex, Harvick, Busch, Blaney, Elliott, Johnson, Kozlowski. So that's going to be quite the. I know Johnson's not going to be in that row at all, but Johnson's actually going to be the highest priced driver. He's going to be starting behind Clint Boyer, who's going to be his partner with Bubba Wallace. So there were going to be a lot of Boyer, Wallace, Hamlin stacks, which are going to now be, I don't know, 12,000. I think it's $12,300. Is going to be a lot to pay for Jimmy Johnson because I don't think he's going to lead any laps. So real quickly, he's going, even if he, let's say, finishes fifth, he's going to end up having 35 place differential points plus like 70 points. At 12.5, it's not going to be enough. Especially since they were probably only going to see one Dominator, but there's going to be a Dominator. 12.5, that's a lot to ask for. Cash, lock them up. GPP is probably a fade. I'll take my chances with Boyer and Hamlin. Hamlin's going to be starting 29th because of the one person. Boyer's going to be starting 39th. I'm going to like Boyer a little bit more than Hamlin, but Hamlin's going to have top 5 potential because I think he runs well here. Let's go Hamlin. I didn't have him in a lot. He still managed to pick up 11 DK points, which seems almost ridiculous, but average finish is 7.25. Doesn't move. Average run of 8.5. Average run of so the top 10 potential without a doubt. I like him more than Boyer, who's an top 20 potential. But starting 40th, the 40 and 39th, the top 20 is not going to kill you, but he is priced up. But I'm going to definitely build around Bowman. Bowman starting on the front row is what I'm looking for, and then we're going to kind of dick around from there. I finally like Kenseth where he's starting 27th is going to be nice. Newman starting 28th, also going to be nice. So there's going to be a lot to pick from back here. And then the rest of it's going to be interesting. It's going to be a tough week. If I remember what I see correctly, pricing's not going to be fun. Pricing's not fun, but that's what makes this a fun sport to do because nothing's easy, and the more decisions that you have to make, just like you hear the guys in football, the more decisions that you have to make, the bigger the edge is. That's one way of thinking about it. But the fewer lineup combinations there are, the more ties there are going to be, because the people who the people who see the race the proper way are all going to have at least one lineup that matches. That's why I think the $12 tournament had 28 weight tie for first. So the $200,000 or the $250,000 went to $20,000 each. I take it more than I've won this week. So, but and it was a fairly logical. It was an Amarola fade, which took balls. Um, an Amarillo fade, a Di Benedetto fade, and everyone starting in the 20s because they had a little bit higher of a finishing position possibility. Ballsy. I mean, it was a ballsy move, but I get. Obviously, I didn't have too much of a chance of getting this lineup because I had too much Almirola, but I will take a 1.5 times weekly over anything because you might as well take your. Sorry, might as well take the money when you can and move on, live to fight another day. I love it's fun trying to win these giant tournaments, but I'd much rather make enough money to keep it going. That's going to do it for me this week in the race day review. Thank you very much for stopping by. As always, rate, review, download, do all that kind of fun stuff. I'm going to have it posted on Twitch and it will be on um, YouTube shortly. Please stop over at the YouTube if you can, my YouTube site. I would love to be able to get that up and going. Give me a thumbs up, give me a comment, just say hi, do whatever you would like. Doesn't even have to say anything constructive, but I got like 3 or 4 of you guys that people that tune in weekly for a minute. They really like the song, not really too sure. Anything like that, I would love to just get a subscribe, get a rate. That would be great. Thank you very much, and I will see you next time.